When evening came, Jesus, like a good host, would not leave the crowd until they had all been dismissed. I don't know what that meant in this context. Did dismissed mean that all of them had the chance to express their individual thanks and their expressions of gratitude to him, or to have at least a brief exchange perhaps with him? Did dismiss simply mean waiting until the crowd dispersed to their separate and intended destinations? I don't know. But Jesus did not leave until they did. And while dismissing the crowd, he simultaneously instructs the disciples to board a boat, go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, a 2-hour boat ride. The disciples, of course, obey. They set sail in the evening after a long day and lots of ministry, and 1 hour into their journey, about 3 miles in, approximately a 6-mile distance from shore to shore, a storm begins to rage. It has the disciples stuck right in the middle between where they were and where they were heading. They kept rowing, of course. It has all resulted in expended energy and expended effort. But while they are expending energy and effort, they are making absolutely no progress at all. The wind, we are told, was working against them. The storm was gripping them in fear. They are stuck right literally in the middle, exhausted, frustrated, spiritually vulnerable, and theologically fatigued. Jesus had suggested that they go ahead, and when he finished dismissing the crowd, he decided that it was better for him in that moment to find a consecrated place to pray. And so we're told that he finds a solitary spot on the mountain and he prepares himself to pray. He can, however, see the disciples out there stuck in the middle between shores. He knows that each of them are frustrated and exhausted, trying to row against the ferocity of an unbelievable headwind that keeps them stuck in place despite all of their collective efforts. It was probably more frustrating to them to give it all they had, straining at the oars, the NIV says. They can't put the sail up because the wind is too strong. They can only rely, therefore, on their own rowing, and despite all of this effort, they're literally stuck in place. I felt like that, and I'm sure we all have. When we were excited about doing what Jesus says, or what Jesus inspires, or what Jesus puts on our hearts or in our heads to do, and despite jumping at the opportunities, taking advantage of the invitations, trying to maximize the open doors, enjoy the space God created and inspired, released, and disclosed, it seems like the tasks that are ours, the relationships we manage, the burdens placed upon our shoulders require so much effort with the windy conditions that come with trying to make human progress. And the storms that pop up unawares when trying to get somewhere in life, the fatigue that hits us when we're doing all that we can, and it seems to only keep us in the same place we have always been in. It's like being with the disciples, right in the middle of that body of water, straining but going nowhere. It's frustrating, isn't it? It's exhausting to have the conversations and script them based on what you're learning about yourself in Jesus Christ, and it still leads to an argument, a conversational competition, a frustrated dialogue with another person. And despite all that prayer and practice and purging and surrender, here you are in life, stuck right in the middle. To have stoked the flames of one's courage, to make some extra money, or to cut some necessary expenses, to expose yourself to deeper learning regarding your financial interests. And it's exhausting to look up at month's end, and despite sacrificing, despite having laser focus and concentrated stewardship and collective excitement, the accounts don't look any worse, but they sure don't look any better, just stuck somewhere in the middle. God knows that's how we must feel sometimes, reading the headlines and listening to the front matter of news broadcasts when you see surging numbers from a virus, or Al Sharpton ushering yet another mother to and through a funeral of another child shot by a police officer. To hear men and women stand around and have comedic fodder about things that are racially hurtful and wonder if we're caught in time when hearing content of such racial matters. To engage relationships where you feel like after all this time, it should be deeper than this. It shouldn't be as hard as this. It should be more mature than this. And yet the distant shore is a painful reminder of how long you've been simply stuck in the middle, straining at the oars. How do you manage life in the middle? If you're the disciples out there on that boat that night, rowing and straining, making no progress with such headwind and storm, how do you manage your emotions? I think there are so many salient lessons in the text. Jesus sees them struggling. He knows they are fighting fear. They are afraid that this might be the night they meet their imminent demise. Jesus knows that this middle space where they are straining and struggling is not really about the storm as much as it is about their faith. And the Lord loves them too much to let them live their lives always vulnerable to the temptations offered in the middle spaces of life's experiences. If He doesn't minister to them in this middle space, they will always give in to their fear when they experience strain in the middle between thoughts that need to mature, or efforts that need a final push, or challenges that expose benefit both in quitting and in offering one more push and effort. He knows that if He doesn't challenge them in this space, they will avoid effort later because they're scared of what the middle may require of them, and He can't let them never try again, or never love again, or never do anything big that is scary again. He knows He can't leave them stuck in the middle until they never shake hands with courage or never step out on faith. So you know what He does? Jesus walks to them on the water to demonstrate His might, His strength over nature. That's the miracle in the text. He walks to them on the water to show who is in control, to calm them down, to give them that I got this kind of walk. The disciples are so victims of temptation that they come to this space in the middle between shore, and they're so scared that they have interpreted Jesus walking to them on the water as if He's a ghost. It's a ghost, they say. And after saying that, they give themselves permission to fear even more based on this interpretation. Now, hear it again. Disciples who've been following the Master, watching Him work, witnessing miracles, and in the middle of the storm, the first thing they interpret when they see somebody coming towards them is that it must be a ghost. They just saw Him multiply meager provisions, feed a hungry multitude. They started the renovation of internal space, moving in furniture and fixtures of faith that have already changed the look and feel of their individual lives. And yet, when the middle starts messing with them, they let their interpretations take them to the far extreme of what I call the absurd. It's a ghost? Really? Here is what I want to encourage you to do. When life has spaced you in the middle, where on your way to better, on your way to resolved, on your way to blessing, on your way to peace, on your way to progression, when life has spaced you in the middle, not where you used to be, but not where you intend to be, when everything in the middle is stirring up agitation and the pain of the effort and the fatigue to even make progress, the feeling of doing so much, and yet I'm in the same spot, the same place, the same space, and it seems like I'm stuck in the same season. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is learn with your faith to interrogate your assertions. I'll say it again. When stuck in the middle, between shore and shore, on my way to a better life, but not close enough to feel the change, and yet still feeling the embers of the fire that was burning on the shore I just pulled away from. The first thing I want you to do is use your faith to interrogate your assertions. If you believe in Jesus, then it brings a faith level of interrogation to every thought you have, every emotion you generate in whatever space you're in, especially when you're trying to manage the middle where all this wind is blowing and this storm is raging. Look at how far out there the disciples have allowed themselves to go. Jesus comes walking to them on the water, and not one of them has as a first response, first thought, based on who they follow, what they've heard him teach, how they've observed him work, what they've seen him do, and not one of them says, "You think that's Jesus? I hope it's Jesus. Maybe it's Jesus." What happened to make their first response an extreme, terrifying interpretation that sounds like this? It's a ghost. I'll tell you what happened. They let the fatigue and frustration of rowing in a storm, making no progress, stuck in the middle of this stormy space in life, they let all of this make them too fearful to faith the facts. To faith the facts. Here's the point. I don't care how tough your middle space in life is right now. You maintain enough faith to interrogate your fatigue, interrogate your frustration, and interrogate your fear. Before you decide that quitting is an option, pull quit in and ask quit some questions. Has God been too good to me to give up? Has God brought me too far for me to be acting like this? Before you make decisions and release toxic words and change direction and consider a course that leads to your demise, before you give up and abandon the project, run from the vision, give up the opportunity, before you do any of these, interrogate how you're feeling, interrogate what you're interpreting and what kind of interpretation you're putting on it, interrogate the lens you are using to make your interpretation of things. Wait a minute. Let me stop talking like this. A ghost? I'm not scripting my life based on my fear. Is it true that it's a ghost? And if not, what could it be? If Jesus is trying to grow me and strengthen me and deepen my faith, how should I then interpret this? And since he walks with me and lets me walk with him, since he's with me and lets me be with him, let me use who I am in him to interrogate what I'm dealing with. If God is really showing his love for me in this, and not that I'm being punished or singled out, let me interrogate what I've been thinking. What questions should I ask if this is not done to weaken me, but to strengthen me? What are my questions if this wasn't really intended to destroy me, but to grow me? What are my questions if I'm to see this as a blessing and not a burden? Am I talking to anybody? Faith, the facts. The fact is, God is always with you. He is always working in and through your life with your good as the ultimate aim. Faith, the facts. This is not the worst thing you have ever experienced. It's only the next thing you have experienced. This is not the insurmountable, because nothing is impossible for our God.